Nestorius and Nestorianism. Sources place the birth of Nestorius in 381 in the city of Germanische in the province of Syria, Roman Empire, now in southern Turkey. He received his clerical training in Antioch. He was living as a priest and monk in the monastery of Eupepius, and he gained a reputation for his sermons that led to his enthronement by Theodosius II, as Patriarch of Constantinople. Nestorius had a reputation for asceticism, orthodoxy and the eloquence of his sermons, and the popularity of the memory of St. John of Antioch among the people of Constantinople may have influenced the emperor to choose another bishop from Antioch. He was consecrated in April 428. The Patriarchate of Constantinople was a position of great honor, but it required political astuteness. Emperor Constantine the Great, 272–337, in a desperate attempt to save the Roman Empire, had moved the capital to Constantinople. The strained relations between the Eastern Roman Empire, centered in Constantinople, and the Western Roman Empire, centered in Rome, were reflected within the Church through theological differences, the establishment of rival apostolic lines of succession, and the development of the concept of primacy. Nestorius' rival, Cyril, Patriarch of Alexandria from 412 to 444, was having difficulty controlling the Antiochian community in Egypt, and employed the strategy of discrediting Nestorius, the Patriarch of Constantinople, as a heretic in order to enlist the support of the Roman Church against him. At the beginning of his term in Constantinople, Nestorius had promised Emperor Theodosius II that he would free the land of heretics and I will give you heaven in return, help me to destroy the heretics and I will help you destroy the Persians. He immediately sought to strengthen the laws against heretics, adding new penalties against them. He antagonized Memnon, Bishop of Ephesus, by pursuing heretics into Ephesian ecclesiastical districts. The church in Ephesus at that time had lost financial support because of the importance of the church in Constantinople. At the end of 428, Nestorius preached the first of his famous sermons against the use of the word Theotokos, Mother of God, in reference to Virgin Mary, claiming that Mother of Christ was appropriate instead, and detailing his Antiochian doctrine of the Incarnation. He never considered Christ simply as a man, but made a precise distinction between divine nature, ousia, and person, hypostasis. He refused to attribute the human acts and the sufferings of Jesus to the divine nature, arguing that God could not suffer on the cross, as God is omnipotent. Therefore, the human part of Christ died on the cross, but not the divine. In his sermons, he is said to have argued that the creature hath not given birth to the uncreatable, the Word came forth, but was not born of her, and I do not say God is 2 or 3 months old. So Nestorianism would refer to the doctrine that there are 2 distinct hypostases in the incarnate Christ, the one divine and the other human. Nestorianism originated in the Church as an attempt to rationally explain and understand the incarnation of the divine Logos, the second person of the Holy Trinity, as the man Jesus Christ. Nestorianism taught that the human and divine essences of Christ are separate and that there are 2 persons, the man Jesus Christ and the divine Logos, which dwelt in the man. In consequence, Nestorians rejected such terminology as God suffered or God was crucified, because the human aspect of Jesus Christ which suffered was separate from his divinity. They rejected the term Theotokos, Mother of God, for the Virgin Mary, suggesting instead the title Christotokos, Mother of Christ, because in their opinion Mary gave birth to only the human person of Jesus and not the divine. The first to criticize it were Eusebius, who became later a bishop of Dorylaeum, and 2 priests, Philip and Proclus, who had both been unsuccessful candidates for the patriarchate. Cyril, who opposed his views, argued that Nestorius was actually denying the reality of the Incarnation by making Jesus Christ into two different persons, one human, one divine, sharing one body. At a synod convened in Alexandria in August of 430, Cyril advised Pope Celestine I to condemn the teachings of Nestorius. Cyril sent to Rome his correspondence with Nestorius, a collection of Nestorius' sermons, and a newly composed work of his own, the 5 books of Contra Nestorium. They were translated into Latin, and the Pope assembled the customary council, gave a general condemnation of Nestorius, and called for him to recant within 10 days. Nestorius had already arranged with Emperor Theodosius II to assemble a council. He rushed to issue a summons before the condemnation of Pope Celestine I arrived on December 6, 430. The General Church Council was held at Ephesus, a special seat for the veneration of Mary, where the Theotokos formula was popular. The emperor gave his support to the Archbishop of Constantinople, while Pope Celestine I was in agreement with Cyril. Cyril took charge of the Council of Ephesus, 431, opening debate before the long overdue contingent from Antioch could arrive. Nestorius himself refused to attend because he did not consider the council to be officially complete without the presence of the bishops from Antioch. The council deposed Nestorius and declared him a heretic. The teaching of all churches that accept the Council of Ephesus is that in the incarnate Christ is a single hypostasis, God and man at once. That doctrine is known as the hypostatic union. Nestorius's opponents charged him with detaching Christ's divinity and humanity into two persons existing in one body, thereby denying the reality of the Incarnation. While the council was in progress, John I of Antioch and the Eastern bishops arrived and were furious to hear that Nestorius had already been condemned. They convened their own synod, at which Cyril was deposed. Both sides then appealed to the emperor. Initially, the imperial government ordered both Nestorius and Cyril to be deposed and exiled. Nestorius was made to return to his monastery at Antioch, and Maximian was consecrated Archbishop of Constantinople in his place. Cyril was eventually allowed to return as Patriarch Cyril of Alexandria. In the following months, 17 bishops who supported Nestorius's doctrine were removed from their sees, and his principal supporter, John I, Patriarch of Antioch, succumbed to imperial pressure around March 433 and abandoned Nestorius. Eventually, Emperor Theodosius II, who had supported Nestorius initially, bowed to the influence of his sister Pulcheria to issue an imperial edict, August 435, that all Nestorius writings to be burned, and he exiled Nestorius to a monastery in the great oasis of Thebes in Egypt, securely within a diocese of Cyril. The monastery suffered attacks by desert bandits, and Nestorius was injured in one such raid. Nestorius died shortly after the Council of Chalcedon in 451, in Egypt. Aftermath. In the Roman Empire, the doctrine of monophysitism developed in reaction to Nestorianism. The new doctrine asserted that Christ had but one nature, his human nature being absorbed into his divinity. The theological conflict led to the Nestorian schism, a split within the Byzantine Church and the creation of separate Nestorian churches that flourished in the Middle East and Central Asia. The Assyrian Church of the East refused to drop support for Nestorius and denounce him as a heretic, and it has continued to be called Nestorian in the West, to distinguish it from other ancient Eastern churches. The Sassanid Persian kings, who were at constant war with Byzantium, saw the opportunity to assure the loyalty of their Christian subjects and supported the Nestorian schism. They granted protection to Nestorians in 462, and executed the pro-Byzantine Catholicos Babui, who was then replaced by the Nestorian bishop of Nisibis Barsauma. Nestorianism was officially adopted at the Synod of Seleucia in 486. The Nestorians were expelled from Edessa in 489 by the Emperor Zeno and immigrated to Persia. The Persians allowed the transfer of the school of Edessa to the Persian city Nisibis, where it became even more famous than at Edessa. Nestorius is venerated in the Assyrian Church of the East as a saint, the Syriac for Saint Nestorius being Mar Nestorios. Thought and works. The writings of Nestorius were numerous, but because they were burned wherever they could be found, surviving fragments are mainly in Syriac or embedded in the works of his opponents. Nestorius's earlier surviving writings, however, including his letter written in response to Cyril's charges against him, contain material that seems to support charges that he held that Christ had two personhoods. Though some of Cyril's criticisms misrepresent the teachings of Nestorius, the 12 anathematisms he drew up for the recantation of Nestorius gave a fairly accurate representation of Nestorius's views. Nestorius did not disown these propositions. Christological implications. From the point of view of the Chalcedonian theology, which is held by most Western and Orthodox churches, the teaching of Nestorius has important consequences relating to the theology of the Eucharist. During the Protestant Reformation, some groups were accused of reviving the schism of Nestorius when they denied the real presence. The real presence is the term various Christian traditions use to express their belief that, in the Eucharist, Jesus the Christ is really, and not merely symbolically, present in what was previously just bread and wine.